to the next part of this session, which is the describing the closed circulatory systems, which is basically the mammalian circulatory system. So we're going to distinguish a few terms here. How do we define a closed rather than an open? Some organisms, very simple organisms, things like small insects, they have an open circulatory system, which means that the fluid, the circulatory fluid basically is the blood for mammals, but it, in other animals, it might not be called blood. So the circulatory fluid, so it's better to use that term. It's more general. Always contained within vessels, whereas of course in an open one, it's not. So here we have an example of a closed circulatory system. Note that this is not a double circulatory system. We're going to see the crucial difference in a minute. And the fluid is contained within these vessels. We have here exchange taking place. So a separate tissue fluid bathes the cell of the body. And it's important that it's separate from the circulatory fluid. And exchange will take place between the two fluids, basically between the fluid contained in the vessels and the tissue fluid. So here is my capillary bed here. Simplified, obviously, right? The capillary beds are actually really extensive. They branch throughout the whole body. Bed, and this is where exchange takes place. And basically here would be my fluid, my tissue fluid that bathes the cells of the body. Tissue fluid here. And the exchange, of course, is by diffusion, right? By diffusion. What is a double closed circulatory system? The best and most sort of succinct way to phrase it is that the blood passes through the heart twice for every full circuit of the body. So we have the two smaller circuits that are called the pulmonary and the systemic circuit. So let's label that here on our diagram. So I'm just going to use different colors here for you guys. Green's fine. So the the smaller circuit is the one that leaves the heart, goes to the lungs. So deoxygenated blood leaves the heart, goes to the lungs. Gas exchange takes place here. Oxygenated blood comes back from the lungs into the heart. That is one loop. That is the pulmonary circuit. Pulmonary circuit. And then, of course, let's change color here. I'll use yellow. The second circuit is now when the oxygenated blood leaves the heart, goes to the systemic circulation, goes to the capillary bed. This capillary bed is at the lungs. This capillary bed is throughout the entire body, goes to all of the organs. Gas exchange also takes place here, as well as nutrient exchange. Nutrients delivered, metabolic waste taken away. And the deoxygenated blood now comes back to the heart in order to then go around the lungs again. So this is my systemic circuit. And typically the systemic circuit is going to be, on average, much higher pressure than the pulmonary because it needs to deliver the blood further. Systemic circuit. Okay. Specifically now, the mammalian circulatory system is an example of a double closed circulatory system. And how can we describe it? What can we say about it? Well, the need is that mammals specifically are all endotherms. They expand, so they have a higher metabolic rate. Animals spend about 80% of their energy to maintain their body temperature. So it's the most efficient circulatory system. A double closed circuit is needed. because our blood is involved in both gas transport and exchange and nutrient transport, as well as immune response. Bear in mind. So all body cells are bathed in what we call the tissue fluid, where the actual immediate exchange of substances between cells and the fluid is going to take place, again, by diffusion. Let's have a look at a typical exam question. So double-closed circulatory systems retain blood within the blood vessels at all times, suggests two benefits of keeping blood within blood vessels. So basically, if we break this down, the context is that we are dealing with closed circulatory systems. The command word, of course, is suggest. So, but because I'm being asked to suggest two benefits specifically, I know that I'm writing two short answers about it. And my direction is going to be to focus only, where is it? At the advantages, at the benefits. Take a minute to answer that for yourselves before we look at the answer together. So I'm just conscious of time because we've got quite a lot to cover. Let's look at the answer together. So there are three possible marks here, as is quite often with a lot of mark schemes. There's more marks available that you could say, but here you will only get a maximum of 2 marks. So the first mark goes for simply stating that a closed system is more efficient at delivering oxygen to respiring tissues. I know that it seems really obvious, but we haven't been told that anywhere in the question. So you can get a mark for just stating that. And then we qualify it. How? Why is it more efficient? Well, first of all, the blood flows. First of all, let's look at this point as a bit more straightforward. A higher blood pressure can be maintained if there is nothing containing the blood, if the blood kind of diffusely travels through the tissues of the body, the pressure is going to be much lower. And indeed, the pressure of the tissue fluid is much lower than the pressure that we have in the blood. So you can maintain a higher blood pressure. Mammals tend to be larger animals than non-mammals. So you need a higher blood pressure to ensure that the blood can reach all tissues. And finally, the blood flow can be diverted or directed to specific places by vasodilation or vasoconstriction. Quick reminder about these terms. Vasodilation means blood vessels expand, they increase in diameter. Vasoconstriction means they shrink, basically, they reduce in diameter, they constrict, they contract. So by vasoconstriction, you can divert less blood. So basically the body can regulate the amount of blood diverted to each part of the body, to each organ, by means of vasodilation, vasoconstriction. So that's a third mark that you could say here.